Last year, during my travels in Korea, I came across these petroglyphs at a museum in the city Gyeongju. Gyeongju was the old capital of Korea, from 57 BC to 935 AD, when this part of Korea was known as Silla. Here, the Gyeongju National Museum is home to relics and cultural history of the Silla Kingdom. On the eastern outdoor balcony of the building at the museum's entrance is where I saw it. For some of you watching, you may have similar ideas as me as to what these carvings could represent. To me, this really looks like mushrooms growing out of this person's head, and all the diamonds and shapes around it. Could those be fractals? As intriguing as this was for me, this petroglyph wall at the museum is just a replica. The original is in the valley of the Benguchon stream, which has two different petroglyph sites, along with some other very interesting discoveries. And after seeing the replica, I knew I had to go see the original in person, so I made my way down there. The Cheonjeon-ri petroglyphs, located about a 30-kilometer drive away on the outskirts of Ulsan, were discovered in 1970. Located not far downstream from there is the other petroglyph site discovered 1 year later in 1971. Both are considered national treasures of Korea. Right nearby are two other museums. Both have information about findings in the valley, especially the Ulsan Petroglyph Museum, as well as having more replicas of the carvings. The Benguchon Stream Valley is very old, with petroglyphs estimated to have been made around 5000 BC, according to modern archaeologists based on their findings in the valley. This petroglyph site also has recent engravings from Silla royal family members who visited the area in 525 and 539 AD and left records of it on the rock. But I wonder, could the other carvings be older? Because in this valley, there are even sites of dinosaur footprints from the Cretaceous period from 111 million years ago. One of the footprint sites is literally a few steps away from the Cheonjeon-ri petroglyphs. And this tells that the valley is incredibly well preserved. The date of the original engravings are estimated based on stone tools and items found in the valley, along with the types of animals they think were carved at the other petroglyph site. It's good to keep in mind that most items and tools that are not stone will degrade rather quickly, especially when exposed to the elements. So if the petroglyphs were made before 5000 BC, it would be very difficult to find additional evidence of human activity in the valley. But other discoveries have shown that humans have been in the Korean peninsula since about 40,000 BC, and other hominids have been there since 700,000 BC. The issue with the Cheonjeon-ri petroglyphs is that there are inconsistencies between the original and the replicas of the museums, along with other models like the infoboards at the site. The newest replicas would likely be the most up-to-date, but it seems the engraving paths haven't been agreed upon and are changed slightly in each model depending on different people's interpretations. They don't seem to know it exactly. And certainly when you look at the original, it can be hard to make out in some parts. The area of the person's head is one of those places due to weathering of the stone wall. It can be discouraging as to whether or not it's really mushrooms growing out of the person's head, but there are other ways to determine this. For example, looking at the petroglyphs at different times of day when the lighting is different. You can argue that there are differences in the depth of the carving between the head and, quote, mushrooms, but so does the rest of the petroglyph wall. They all have different depths, some deeper, shallower, and these could simply be from differences in time spent engraving, as well as weathering. There are ways to determine carving versus erosion or weathering, like looking for carving techniques, pecking, scratching, and also 3D scanning the wall. Perhaps it's more difficult to tell with this wall, but it seems more analysis may need to be done. An interesting discovery that's not too far away that may show some resemblance to the petroglyphs in the valley is a site in Russia. There are some similarities here to the types of engravings, like the circles, swirls, and animals. They have faces or masks too, some of them very psychedelic looking. Perhaps if these are related, it could help determine a more precise date to when these were made. And it turns out I'm not the only one who think they could be related. ICOMOS is an association that works to conserve and protect cultural heritage places around the world, and they help UNESCO. They also think that this petroglyph site in Russia may relate to the petroglyphs in the valley here in Korea. But not only this one. They have compared the valley petroglyphs to 6 other rock arts in China, Japan, Mongolia, and Russia. They say this site in Russia and this other site in Mongolia have a similar legacy of cultural history. They also compared them to a petroglyph site in Karelia, Russia, petroglyphs of Lake Onega, which have what appear to be engraved mushrooms, as well as the Chukotka site, which literally does show mushrooms on people's heads. These last 2 sites are quite far, the first more so, but it's very interesting that they also appear to have mushrooms in their carvings. Looking back at the original petroglyphs, if these are mushrooms and fractals or not, could it be proof of psychedelic mushroom use, or simply the desire for artistic expression? Though you can argue that psilocybin use can bring upon this desire in us, I don't think it's unlikely that they're related to these kinds of mushrooms, considering there are more archaeological discoveries that seem to portray them. The current theory of human evolution that archaeologists fit their discoveries into is becoming very limited, as well as fairly contested with real evidence that is breaking this theory, or rather, showing that our current understanding of the human timeline needs to honestly be open to change, and change it must. A good piece of evidence that insists that change is the Jebel Irhoud skulls found in Morocco, which puts Homo sapiens' timeline back to at least 300,000 years ago. And there's now talk of human skulls found in China that may be 1 million years old. And this is just for Homo sapiens. What about all of our older ancestors before them? Before this video ends, bringing us back to the petroglyphs, I need to talk about one more important thing. The Cheonjeon-ri Dam, built in 1965 before the petroglyph sites were discovered, supplies the city Ulsan with drinking water. But this dam is causing the petroglyphs to be flooded for about 8 months every year. It's already damaged about 200 of the 300 carvings at the southernmost petroglyph site. This is a major issue for the preservation of these petroglyphs. There has been discussion to create an additional dam to prevent further damage to them, but nothing has been started yet. And this has been discussed for the last 25 years, while actively being damaged for the last 60 years. Very recently, both petroglyph sites have been declared under UNESCO, and hopefully this speeds up the plans to build a new dam or find some way to preserve them. But until then, the petroglyphs will continue to be damaged every year, and hopefully something is done sooner than later, before the carvings are lost to time. What do you think about the petroglyphs? Do you think they show evidence of psychedelic mushroom use? I definitely think it could, but I certainly recommend for those of you interested to come see for yourselves too. And who knows, what other discoveries are yet to be made in the river valley, or simply by where you walk every day, the places you travel to, or in plain sight. It's a big world, and there will always be something new to discover.